dried blood on the sandwich bitten once, the snack paper ripped violently, chocolate trampled on the grass, melting under the merciless April sun. The pink bike lay on its side like a wounded animal, wheels still turning slowly in the oppressive silence of Wright Park. Angela 10 grabs Nicole's wrist hard enough to leave bruises. His eyes scan every shadow, every movement between the trees. Michelle left to get her snack exactly 37 minutes ago. She promised to come back quickly, Angela whispers, her voice breaking. Nicole, just 8 years old, stares at the abandoned sandwich, her stomach growling in protest. But something deeper stops her from touching it. The wind carries the echo of their voices calling for Michelle, each scream more desperate than the last. The park, once a playground of happy memories, now seems to be conspiring against them. Something runs down Nicole's cheek. They are not tears. It's the cold sweat of instinctive fear. Angela holds her sister's hand so tightly that her knuckles turn white. They both know. Michelle would never leave food half-cooked. Michelle would never abandon her bike. At 1:20 p.m., when Janet, the late nanny, arrives, she finds the two girls petrified. Their silence is the first cry of a tragedy that would consume Tacoma for the next 30 years. But what scared her most, more than the bitten snack, more than the fallen bicycle, was the look in Angela's eyes when she pointed to the ground and said, almost without a voice, "She left that behind." And Michelle never left anything behind. Angela and Nicole wait at Wright Park for over an hour, feeling increasingly hungry and confused. The April sun is not strong, but the wait becomes unbearable. They call for Michelle once, twice, 10 times. Voices echo through the trees, but no response comes. Angela, the oldest, feels a knot in her stomach. Something is wrong, she repeats to herself. Michelle's pink bike mysteriously appears next to the climbing toy, but there's no sign of the girl. The sisters approach and find the sandwich package torn, half of one of them nibbled. Easter chocolate eggs scattered on the grass, some trampled. Is it her joke? Nicole 8 asks without conviction. The wind brings only silence in response. Angela takes one of the intact eggs and squeezes it in her hand until it breaks. The feeling that something terrible has happened grows by the minute, while the two remain paralyzed, not knowing what to do, waiting for a sister who would never return. Nanny Janet arrives at 1:20 p.m., late, and immediately realizes something is wrong. The two girls are scared. "Where is Michelle?" he asks, already pulling out the pager. There's no time for scolding. She calls Catherine, the girl's mother, who is at work as a nurse at the local hospital. She wouldn't come back unannounced, Catherine insists over the phone. Something happened. The police are called, but the first officer to arrive suggests that the girl was probably visiting a friend. "Children disappear and reappear all the time," he says, almost bored. Catherine arrives at the park in 15 minutes, abandoning patients. Your eyes find the partially eaten sandwich and your stomach drops. She would never leave food half-eaten. The mother's voice trembles as she repeats. She wore pink glasses. She had braces on her teeth. Jeans, a white t-shirt with a rainbow on it, striped socks. The policeman takes notes mechanically, still not convinced of the seriousness of the situation. "Let's wait another hour," he suggests. Catherine feels her anger rising. My daughter is not the type to run away. Something is very wrong. Janet hugs the other girls, who start to cry, finally realizing that the situation is serious. At 2 p.m., the park buzzes with activity. Neighbors form impromptu search parties. Reluctant officers check public restrooms, picnic areas, parking lots. Catherine tries to remember every friend, every acquaintance, every favorite place of Michelle's, but no clues appear. The day progresses. 3, 4, 5 hours of fruitless searching. The sun begins to set and lanterns appear. Michelle liked to climb trees, check each one. She loved watching turtles in the creek, scouring the banks. Nothing. At some point, Catherine hears one officer whisper to another, "Call the K9 unit and tell forensics to be on standby." That's when she knows. You know without wanting to know. Your entire body feels it before any confirmation. A tremor that starts in the knees and moves up to the chest. My daughter is no longer alive. he thinks, unable to express it. The sky quickly darkens, as if nature reflects the horror that is to come. A helicopter flies overhead, its beam cutting through the growing gloom. Neighbors begin to exchange desperate looks. Nobody talks about when she comes back anymore. The police dog barks at 7:43 p.m. in a wooded area less than 400 meters from the park's main square. Common area, frequented, but with vegetation dense enough to hide the unthinkable. The police officer asks everyone to step back. Catherine is held by Janet. The sisters were taken to a neighbor's house. "We found a body," the officer says, not "we found your daughter." The formality that breaks hearts. Catherine collapses, legs giving way under the weight of certainty. In the distance, he sees the investigators arriving, the yellow ribbons being unfurled, the blue and red lights flashing against the darkening sky. Michelle is lying in an unnatural position, torn clothes, undeniable brands. The subsequent report would confirm strangulation, asphyxiation, abuse. Her pink glasses, her favorite, were never found, as if the killer needed a trophy, a reminder of the girl who never got to deliver the sandwiches to her sisters. The news spreads through the city like poison. Tacoma would never be the same. And in the following weeks, mothers begin to pick up their children in person from school, parks empty, and a question hangs in the air: who would do this to a child? The Pierce County coroner enters the autopsy room at 5 a.m. the next morning. Michelle Welch's petite body under the white sheet appears dwarfed on the steel table. He's been doing this for 20 years, but he never gets used to it with children. Remove the sheet and begin the procedure. The marks on the neck are unmistakable. Manual strangulation with disproportionate force. Bruises on the wrists and ankles indicate restraint. The abuse is confirmed minutes later. He dictates to the recorder technical details that, translated into simple language, reveal indescribable brutality. What shocks him, however, is the disposition of the body when found. Michelle had been repositioned after death. Arms crossed over the chest, legs stretched out, hair combed. Like a broken doll carefully arranged. A morbid contradiction. The violence of the act versus post-mortem care. Ritual behavior, he notes. Possible remorse or symbolic meaning. In the evidence room, items are cataloged methodically. Fibers under the nails, possibly from fighting. Fragments of blue nylon rope on the wrists. Remains of adhesive tape in the mouth, indicating gagging. The most disturbing, a strand of hair found on the victim's clothing, cut close to the root, not plucked. The killer had left a signature, deliberately or not. Catherine is called to identify personal items. The friendship bracelet made by Nicole, the school backpack with band stickers, the sneakers with loose laces that Michelle never tied properly. Each item is a stab at the maternal heart. "Where are her glasses?" asks Catherine. The investigator consults the list, turns pages, looks again. They were not found, he confirms. The rose-colored glasses weren't on her. A seemingly trivial detail, but one that would become significant. The shoes, the socks, the torn jeans. Each piece is a story of violence that investigators try to decipher in search of the perpetrator. The Welch family home becomes unrecognizable within days. Rest in peace posters cover the garden. Mountains of teddy bears, flowers, cards. A neighbor organizes the meals. No one expects Catherine to cook while planning a children's funeral. The sisters, Angela and Nicole, do not speak. They don't cry. They sit on the stairs, holding hands, as if protecting each other from a suddenly threatening world. The child therapist called by social services explains the state of shock, but offers few immediate solutions. "They need time," he says. Catherine almost laughs at the irony. Time. The one thing Michelle no longer had. Media coverage is relentless. Journalists camp out on the sidewalk, microphones extended like weapons. "How do you feel?" The stupidest question ever invented. Catherine would like to scream, "How do you think?" Part of me is buried with her. The funeral takes place in fine rain, as if the sky were also crying. Hundreds of people attend, united by shared horror and fear. Investigators work tirelessly for the first 72 hours, the critical period for solving homicides. They interrogated 43 people, including regular visitors to the park, maintenance employees, and residents of the surrounding area. Everyone has alibis. Nobody saw anything useful. A gardener vaguely remembers a middle-aged man walking hurriedly towards the parking lot, but cannot describe distinguishing features. He wore a cap, is all he remembers. With no credible witnesses, no viable fingerprints, the case begins to quickly go cold. The police chief makes a statement to calm the community. "We are following all leads. We believe it is an isolated case. There is no reason to panic." Half true. They have no idea who to look for. Catherine feels this during the private meeting with the detectives. You can see it in the looks, in the long pauses, in the coffee spilled by nervous hands. The first of many meetings that would end without answers. The city of Tacoma is trying to return to normal, but something fundamental has changed. Children no longer walk alone. August 13th, summer 1986. 4 months after Michelle's death, Tacoma's routine tries to re-establish itself. Parks are slowly filling up again. Children are allowed to play outside the house, although always in groups, never alone. Jennifer Bastian, 13, announces to her mother that she is going to practice cycling at Point Defiance Park, bigger and busier than Wright, where Michelle died. "I'll be back in 2 hours," he promises, adjusting his blue helmet. "I'm just going to do a few laps on the usual track." The mother hesitates, undecided. The Welch case is still fresh in the collective memory, but police insist it was an isolated incident. Furthermore, Jennifer is strong, a competitive cyclist. The park will be full on a summer afternoon. "Be careful, don't talk to strangers," he warns. Jennifer waves happily as she walks away, her blonde ponytail bouncing under her helmet. It's the last image her mother will have of her alive. At 6:15 p.m., Jennifer's mother begins to worry. The daughter was never late for dinner. Call friends. Nobody saw her. She drives to the park, stomach twisting with apprehension. He finds his bicycle abandoned near a side trail. A sneaker is lying a few meters away. She recognizes the custom shoelace that Jennifer had decorated with small, colorful beads. There is no sign of the teenager. The panic is instantaneous, visceral. The police are called immediately. This time, there is no hesitation. Agents arrive in 10 minutes, helicopter in 30. The commander recognizes the alarming signs. "We have a pattern. This is no coincidence." The trail is isolated. Volunteers are organized into search groups. Sniffer dogs arrive. Megan Bastian, the mother, is placed in a police cruiser as the search intensifies. "I'm not going to leave my daughter alone here," he insists. The community reacts with speed born of recent trauma. Hundreds of volunteers emerge spontaneously. Many of them had participated in the search for Michelle. Local radio stations interrupt programming to disseminate information. The entire city seems to hold its breath. Catherine Welch, still devastated by the loss of her own daughter, joins the search. "No one should have to go through this," he murmurs as he sweeps his flashlight through the densest areas of the park. 3 days pass without results. Jennifer seems to have evaporated. The difference from the previous case, now the police are not alone. FBI, state agents, crimes against children experts. A task force is assembled in record time. Jennifer's profile is syndicated nationally. The photograph of his smiling face becomes ubiquitous in newspapers, and inevitably, the rumors start. "It's the same one that killed Michelle," people say. "He likes blonde girls." On the 10th day of the search, when hope has faded, Jennifer's body is found in a dense area of vegetation. Like Michelle, she was carefully positioned after death. Like Michelle, she suffered abuse before being murdered. Like Michelle, her clothes were torn in a specific way. But unlike Michelle, her body was partially covered with leaves and branches, a rudimentary attempt at concealment. In the girl's closed hand, investigators find something she grabbed during the attack. A blue synthetic fiber, similar to a car mat. The details are not disclosed to the press. The connection with the Welch case seems unquestionable. 2 blonde girls, close in age, parks, summer, abandoned bicycles. The community goes into collective panic. Schools cancel external activities. Sales of security systems soar. Tacoma turns into a ghost town after sunset. Terror has a name: the Park Killer. The Tacoma Police Department meeting room is packed. Photos of the victims pinned to the wall, maps marked with X at crime scenes, meticulously constructed timelines. The FBI's criminal profiler, fresh from Quantico, observes everything with clinical attention. "We are dealing with a serial sexual predator," he states bluntly. "White male, 25 to 40 years old, likely with a history of minor sexual offenses. Knows the parks area well, possibly lives or works nearby. Has his own vehicle. Physically strong enough to subdue victims, but does not appear threatening at first glance." The similarity between the cases is discussed in detail. Both blondes, close in age, active, athletic. Both died in the same period of the year. Both positioned similarly post-mortem. The conclusion seems obvious. The same killer committed both crimes. Lists of suspects are compiled. Sex offender registries are reviewed. Park employees, teachers, coaches, anyone with access to children is investigated. Interrogations are conducted by the dozens, then by the hundreds. DNA samples are voluntarily collected from suspects. Genetic analysis technology is still rudimentary in 1986, but the police keep the samples, betting on the future of science. Among the investigators, a consensus forms. They are looking for a single person, a lone wolf whose specific pathology leads him to prey on preteen girls in public settings. The FBI adds the case to its serial killer database. The sensationalist press creates nicknames: the Tacoma Strangler, the Parks Predator, the Bicycle Killer. Meanwhile, the victims' families deal with their grief in their own way. The Welches move away from Tacoma, unable to bear the memories, the frequent visits to the police with no news, the pitying looks in supermarkets. Michelle's sisters, Angela and Nicole, transfer to another school, where no one knows them as the murdered girls' sisters. The Bastians remain, turning their pain into activism. Megan Bastian becomes unofficial spokesperson for families of missing children, creates a foundation named after his daughter, pressing for improvements in investigations, legislative changes, greater protection for children in public spaces. The husband, who cannot stand his wife's constant activism, renewing the wound daily, eventually files for divorce. The years pass, the cases go cold, new crimes make headlines. New tragedies shock the community. A rookie cop in 1986 becomes a sergeant, then a lieutenant, and eventually retires, never seeing the case solved. Files collect dust, the folders turn yellow. An entire closet in the Unsolved Crimes Department holds the evidence. Clothes in plastic bags, autopsy reports, statements, cassette tapes of witness interviews, physical memories of lives cut short. Periodically, new detectives revisit the material, bringing fresh eyes and new techniques. Nothing. The suspect, or suspects, appear to have committed the perfect crimes. The single serial killer theory has gone unquestioned for decades. What other scenario could explain such extraordinary coincidences? Detective Lindsay Wade, recently promoted to Tacoma's Unsolved Crimes Unit, requests the Welch and Bastian case files. Wade grew up in Tacoma. He was just 9 years old when the girls were murdered. He vividly remembers the panic, his mother no longer allowing him to play outside, the constant fear that permeated his childhood. "I became a police officer because of these cases," he confesses to his colleagues. "I never forgot those girls' faces on the posters." His determination is palpable. Wade re-examines every page, every photo, every report. He notices something that other investigators may have noticed but never formally documented: subtle differences in criminal signatures. Michelle was left in plain sight, Jennifer partially hidden. In Michelle, the strangulation was with the hands, on Jennifer with some kind of rope. "What if it's not the same person?" Wade asks during the meeting. Experienced colleagues smile. "Too many coincidences, newbie," Wade insists. Requests that DNA samples collected from both victims be re-examined using newer technologies. In 2001, genetic analysis had advanced significantly since the 1980s. The state laboratory accepted the request, but warned it could take months. The queue of active cases is a priority. Wade waits patiently. He continues to revisit other aspects, re-interviewing witnesses who are still alive, retracing steps. Many don't want to talk. The wounds remain open. The memories painful. Some moved away, others passed away. The community seems to want to forget, but cannot. The crimes defined an entire generation of children in Tacoma. Finally, in March 2002, preliminary results arrive. Wade can hardly believe the revelation. The genetic profiles found in the bodies are different. The DNA found on Michelle's body does not match the DNA found on Jennifer's body. The conclusion is inescapable. It was not a serial killer. There were two different killers. The revelation is met with initial skepticism by the police hierarchy. The single serial killer paradigm is deeply embedded in institutional culture. Admitting a mistake means recognizing that 2 decades were wasted following false premises. The press conference is carefully orchestrated. New scientific evidence suggests a revision of the original theory, declares the police chief, avoiding explicitly admitting the error. Wade, now officially leading the reinvestigation team, implements a new strategy, treating the cases as completely separate. 2 teams, 2 timelines, 2 lines of investigation. With the DNA now available, she authorizes the use of the FBI's CODIS, Combined DNA Index System, to search for matches. Nothing. The profiles are not in the system. This means that the killers were never arrested for crimes that required DNA collection or committed their crimes before the implementation of the bank. Wade proposes something unprecedented, collecting DNA from all suspects from 1986. The list? 2,300 names. The men are contacted one by one. Many collaborate readily. Some refuse, demanding court orders. Others disappeared, moved far away, passed away. It is detailed, methodical, exhaustive work. Wade practically lives in the office. Get divorced. He barely sees his own children. She's obsessed with answers. The families of the victims are watching anxiously. Megan Bastian, now with gray hair, visits the police station weekly. "I didn't think I would live to see this day," she says hopefully. Catherine Welch, who returned to Tacoma to follow the new investigation, seems more skeptical. "We've heard promises before." In 2006, after 4 years of systematic search, the list was reduced to 160 individuals who could not be excluded by alibi, location, or DNA sample. Wade reorganizes the team. "Now we need traditional research, not just science. We need to reconstruct 2 lives to understand why these girls were chosen." 12 years after Lindsay Wade began her crusade for the Welch and Bastian cases, a new technology emerges in the forensic field: genetic genealogy. Private laboratories are beginning to offer services that allow them to compare unknown DNA samples with commercial genealogy databases. A new door opens. Wade, now promoted to lieutenant, gets approval to submit the DNA samples from both cases to this new investigative method. The process is complex, expensive, and experimental. Tacoma becomes one of the first jurisdictions in the country to adopt the technique for old unsolved cases. The wait is agonizing. Wade continues his traditional investigation, focusing on the 160 names on the short list. Each suspect is thoroughly re-evaluated. Among them, one name begins to attract attention in the Welch case: Robert D. Washburn, 60, a retired bus driver living discreetly in Illinois. In 1986, he lived less than a mile from Wright Park. Washburn had been interviewed briefly in 1986, but provided an alibi that, at the time, was considered solid. He was working during the estimated time of Michelle's death. A thorough review of the time records, however, shows a discrepancy. Washburn left an hour early that day, citing illness. Enough time. More disturbing. He had called police days before the crime, reporting suspicious behavior at the park, a man watching children. A classic maneuver of sexual predators. Insert themselves into the investigation, monitor police progress. Wade orders surveillance on Washburn. Details have emerged about his past. 2 reports of inappropriate behavior with minors that never resulted in formal charges. An ex-wife who described him as obsessed with control. A collection of newspaper clippings about crimes against children found in his garage when he moved. In parallel, preliminary results from genetic genealogy are beginning to emerge for the Bastian case. The DNA found on Jennifer's body partially matches that of a man named James Hartman, who had voluntarily submitted his DNA to a commercial genealogy service out of curiosity about his ancestors. James is not a suspect. He was a child in 1986 and lives on the East Coast. But the correspondence suggests kinship. The killer is probably a close relative. James has a brother, Gary, who lived in Tacoma in 1986. Investigators learn that Gary Hartman, now 66, still lives in the area, retired after a career as a nurse in a pediatric clinic. He was never considered a suspect in 1986. No criminal record, exemplary citizen. Wade organizes discreet surveillance. Need current DNA from Hartman to confirm the match, but not enough evidence for a court warrant. A McDonald's restaurant in Tacoma. Gary Hartman eats lunch alone, completely oblivious to the woman sitting 2 tables away, an undercover detective. When he leaves, she collects the used napkin and places it in a sterile bag. In the laboratory, confirmation. The DNA on the napkin matches the DNA found on Jennifer Bastian's body, with a probability of 1 in 1.1 billion. Simultaneously, in Illinois, agents obtain Robert Washburn's DNA sample from a discarded cigarette butt. Positive result for the Welch case. 2 arrests are meticulously planned, coordinated to occur on the same day. When the agents knock on Washburn's door, he seems almost relieved. "I've been waiting for you for a long time," he says without resistance. Hartman, on the other hand, reacts with genuine surprise, vehemently denying it. 2 men, 2 seemingly normal lives, 2 perfect social masks hiding monstrosities, and a statistically almost impossible coincidence. News of the arrests shakes Tacoma like an emotional earthquake. Decades of fear, suspicion, and theories are replaced by the shocking revelation. 2 independent killers creating the illusion of a serial killer. The national press covers the case extensively. Deadly coincidence graces the cover of USA Today. As the prosecution prepares formal charges, new details emerge about the suspects. Paul Hartman, Gary's younger brother, voluntarily goes to the police. His testimony, transcribed into 47 pages, details a disturbing childhood shared with his brother. Gary has always been obsessed with control, he says, cruelly methodical. He tortured animals when he believed no one was watching. He had a diary where he drew things that no normal child would draw. Paul reveals that he cut ties with his brother in the 90s, after discovering photographs hidden in the basement. Hartman's professional history raises more red flags. He worked as a nurse in 5 different pediatric clinics throughout his career, never staying more than 4 years in each one. No formal complaint was filed, but former colleagues, interviewed after his arrest, report behavior that, in retrospect, appears disturbing. He insisted on performing certain procedures alone without assistance, recalls a nurse. And he had a preference for teenage patients, especially girls. At the time, it seemed like just professional dedication. Others mention his almost obsessive precision, his controlled temperament, his ability to remain impassive even in emotionally charged situations. It was as if he didn't really feel things like others, notes one doctor. Investigators discover that Hartman had been investigated for public indecency in 1983. Washburn, on the other hand, quickly confesses. His testimony, recorded over 11 hours, is a disturbing dive into the mind of a predator. He details how he saw Michelle for the first time 3 weeks before the crime, cycling through the park. How he followed her discreetly to discover her routine. How he meticulously planned the attack, including calling the police to report a suspicious man in the park, thus creating a false lead and establishing a preemptive alibi as a concerned citizen. He describes the crime with clinical coldness that shocks even the most experienced investigators. When asked about the careful positioning of the body after the murder, he explains, "I wanted her to look peaceful. I don't like a mess." The only emotion he shows is irritation when faced with memory errors. The psychological profile identifies Washburn as a classic psychopath. Hartman remains adamant in his innocence despite overwhelming genetic evidence. Sample contamination, argues his lawyer. Laboratory error. When the judge allows a search of his residence, they discover an immaculately organized house. In the basement, behind a false panel, investigators find a shelf with disturbing memorabilia. Recorded cassette tapes of news reports about the 1986 cases, carefully laminated newspaper clippings, and most disturbing, a box containing small objects that look like trophies. Among them, a strand of rose-colored glasses, possibly belonging to Michelle Welch, not Jennifer Bastian. This intriguing detail is never fully explained. Had the two killers known each other? Hartman's home also reveals his fascination with knots and lashings. Books on the topic, rolls of rope organized by thickness, a collection of meticulously arranged ties. The trials take place separately. Washburn accepts a deal with the prosecution, a full confession in exchange for not imposing the death penalty. He is sentenced to 47 years in prison without the possibility of parole. At age 60, it is equivalent to a life sentence. In court, he appears an ordinary, aged, almost frail figure. It's hard to believe that this gray-haired, slumped-shouldered man could be capable of such brutality. Catherine Welch, Michelle's mother, now 72 years old, watches him with a look that mixes hatred and exhaustion. For 3 decades, he imagined the monster that took his daughter as an extraordinary creature. The reality is less dramatic and, in some ways, more disturbing. An ordinary man, indistinguishable in any crowd. She declines the chance to directly address Washburn during the hearing. "I wouldn't waste my last breath on him," he explains later. Michelle's sisters attend the trial. Hartman's trial is more complex. He pleads innocent, forcing a full trial. His lawyer tries to disqualify genetic evidence, questions the legality of obtaining the napkin sample, suggests laboratory contamination, and proposes increasingly fanciful alternative theories. The prosecution methodically presents its case: the indisputable DNA, the items found in his home, the brother's testimony, the history of suspicious behavior, the cataloged photos of girls, the carefully organized ropes and ties, the tapes with news of the crimes. The pattern of an obsessive-compulsive sexual predator. Throughout, Hartman remains impassive, almost bored. He shows no emotion when the jury returns after just 4 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice, although late, brings some relief to the families and to Tacoma. However, the legacy of these tragedies is complex and multifaceted. For communities that lived through the terror of 1986, prison sentences do not erase decades of fear. Parents who raised children in constant paranoia, restricting freedoms, fearing strangers. A generation of children who grew up haunted by stories about girls who never came home. And for the victims' families, justice comes too late to bring true peace. Michelle Welch's father died in 2001 without ever knowing who killed his daughter. Megan Bastian's ex-husband, devastated by the divorce caused by grief, had died of a heart attack in 2010. Relationships destroyed, lives permanently altered. The real-life sentence was ours, Angela Welch, Michelle's sister, bitterly observes. The case of the Tacoma girls, as it became known nationally, provoked significant changes in police procedures and legislation. Washington becomes one of the first states to implement the official use of genetic genealogy in criminal investigations. Protocols for missing children are completely revised, eliminating the waiting period before mobilizing investigative resources. A rapid alert system, similar to Amber Alert, is developed and implemented. Detective Lindsay Wade is promoted to captain, leading a unit specializing in unsolved cases. His persistence for more than 15 years becomes an example in police academies. "Time is no obstacle to justice" becomes their unofficial motto. Tacoma's parks, for so long associated only with tragedies, are undergoing physical and symbolic renovation. Low-key memorials to Michelle and Jennifer are installed. Children can play again without constant fear. If you still remember the name of someone who disappeared in your city, comment, "I didn't forget." Michelle and Jennifer were forgotten by the system for 3 decades. 2 ordinary men hid monsters behind smiles. 2 girls who just wanted to ride their bikes never came home. Who do you still remember? What name resonates with your childhood memories? That absence that made your parents change rules, impose curfews. In every city there is a story like this. A family still waiting for answers. If this case touched you, comment, "I haven't forgotten." Because while we remember, they are never really gone. But what if when you come in just for a minute to get some juice for your daughters, and when you return, the yard is completely empty, no sound? No broken railings, no witnesses, only the swing still oscillating in the air. No screams, No chance, no logic. In the next video, you will learn about the case of two children who disappeared from their own backyard, and the reason why investigators stated they couldn't have left, but they're not here anymore either.